So we finally have the Platinum Trophy for Final Fantasy VII Remake, and have now clocked in somewhere over 90 hours of gameplay. This is definitely the game I played the most hours within the first week of release, since maybe Sekiro was somewhere up there as well. But anyway, let's not get sidetracked. This means it is time for things I wish I knew earlier in Final Fantasy VII Remake. We're going to start this off with somewhat basic tips, but I feel like they're really important that everyone should know just in case you may have overlooked these. So first of all, make sure you're using the Magnify materia alongside with your healing materia. As essentially what the Magnify materia does is it's really similar to the All materia of the classic Final Fantasy VII game. So if we have the Magnify materia linked up with the healing materia here in any of our slots, what it's going to allow us to do is heal our entire party with only one heal use. Now it's true that when you first get your Magnify materia and you use heal on all of your party, the effects will be reduced by 65%. But that's why I said you need to level this up as soon as you can, because once it gets all the way up to rank number 3, it's only going to reduce the effect by 25%. And when you're using tier 3 heals, Kuraga, it doesn't matter that it's going to be reduced by 25%, at least with Aerith you're going to be healing all the way to max health with all of your characters all the time if your setup is correct. The Magnify materia can be found early on in the beginning of chapter 9 during the third arm crane sort of puzzle thing. We need to drop Aerith off on the side here and she can pick up this materia. And two quick side notes on this subject. The first one is make sure that you don't always get in the habit of using the magnified version every single time. There's going to be situations where you only need to heal maybe one of your characters. For these situations, you can press L1 to enable and disable the magnify effect on your magic whenever you want, even in the middle of battles. This way, you maybe only need to use a tier 2 magic instead of a tier 3 if you're only going to heal one of your allies. And side note number 2 is the Magnify also takes place outside of combat, so if you're just walking around the fields and you feel like you need to heal, you can also use the Magnify effect on your healing to heal your entire party at once. Also, a side note on the side note, I suppose, is that when you're walking around the fields and you use an item to heal up your characters, usually it's kind of tedious because once you use the item, it will exit you out the menu and you have to go into the menu again and use another item. However, while selecting which character we want to use the item on, if we hold down L1, it will allow us to use as many of these items as we like, making the process a lot quicker without backing out of the menu. So enough side notes, let's jump back into the combat. There are so many things I want to cover in this video, and I'm trying to make them as short as possible on each point, but I do want to try to explain them as well as possible. So let's move on. Something I realized fairly late on in the game is that regen actually completely cancels out the poison status. So instead of using anything to heal poison, you can simply just use regen, which is a fairly cheap spell to use, and it will completely cancel out the poison. The reason this is such a good idea is because the regen spell is actually under the healing materia as well. Therefore, your healing materia is usually going to be linked up with your Magnify, like we said before, and this way you can actually heal the poison of your entire squad at once without any extra cost. Moving on to more combat tips, something that does actually get explained in game, but it gets overlooked massively by so many people, is the focus abilities are not made for dealing damage. They are made for increasing the stagger bar when the enemy is already pressured. So whenever the enemy is under this pressured status, that's when we want to use the focus abilities. And by focus abilities, I'm referring to Cloud's focus thrust, Barret has focus shot, and Tifa has focus strike. All of these abilities should only ever be used when the enemy is already pressured and you want to increase it to get the enemy staggered. As other than that, the damage really isn't that great and the other abilities will be doing much more damage. Now, I don't feel like it's generally a tip or a trick to recommend you guys to assess enemies. That's pretty much understood. That's something you should be doing. But something I didn't realize until at least halfway through the game for some reason is that if you are in the middle of the fight, at any point you can press the touchpad on the controller pad and you can get the analytics up for all of the enemies if they've already been assessed. So this can be really useful if you don't remember what they were weak to or what their specific condition was to stagger them and stuff like this. But as a general rule of thumb to go by, most humans are weak to fire, most monsters are weak to ice, and most machines are weak to lightning, and then all the flying enemies such as the drakes are usually weak to wind. Now this isn't 100%, there are going to be human enemies that are weak to ice for example, and vice versa, but this is a good general rule to go by if you don't remember exactly what each enemy is weak to. And now we're talking about elements, let's smoothly transition into the best materia on the game, and of course we're talking about the elemental materia. Unfortunately, there are only 2 elemental materia available in the entire game. The first one can be found during chapter number 6. And the second one will be given to us at the end of chapter 14 if we finish every single side quest in the entire game. So why are these so important? Well, the main effect of an elemental materia is that if you link it up with any element such as fire, ice, or lightning, under your weapon, your basic attacks will deal that element damage, which is really good against any enemy that happens to be weak against that element. But in my opinion, what makes the elemental materia so amazing is that if we do the same thing, but under the armor materia slot, so let's say we link the elemental materia down here alongside one of our ice materia, Even without leveling up the elemental materia at all, it'll halve all of the damage received by that element. So if we get hit by an ice attack, it will deal half of the damage it usually would. And then once we level up the elemental materia just once, it will completely nullify any damage received by that element. So as you can see here, for example, fighting against Shiva, we're immune to every single one of her attacks. She can't damage Cloud in any way because all of her attacks happen to be ice. Especially considering because once you level up to their max rank, level 3, not only do the attacks not damage you, but they actually regenerate your health. As we can see here in the gameplay, we've linked it up with the fire materia, and we are literally regenerating health out of the enemy's attack. Now, I don't want to spend this entire video explaining which are the best materia in the game, because I feel that's somewhat up to personal preference and playstyle. However, I will take a little bit more of your time to speak about two really almost essential materia I would definitely recommend. The first one is barrier materia. I would recommend leveling this one up ASAP, as once it gets to rank number 3, you can learn the spell Mana Wall. And what Mana Wall does is it completely halves all of the damage dealt to you, both physical and magical, until the buff wears off. And this in late game is going to be pretty much essential not to get wiped out by some of the summons like instant kill moves and stuff. So definitely get Mana Wall as soon as you can. And I promise this is the final material we're going to be talking about, is get the AP up materia. What this does is that when it's linked with any other materia, it will get 100% more AP points towards that materia, meaning that materia will level up quicker. And the way to get the AP up materia is that first we'll need the pedometer materia. To get the pedometer materia, we get this right at the start of chapter 14 as soon as we leave Aerith's house. And with the pedometer materia equipped, we need to do 5,000 steps, and this will turn the pedometer materia into the AP up materia. So now moving on to some more exciting battle tips. While controlling Barret, as we know, his basic attack consists of holding down square, and then after a few basic attacks, it'll shoot off a big explosion shot, and then he'll have to stop and reload for a second. Well, the trick here is what we want to do is as soon as he does the big explosion shot, we want to press the triangle button, and this way it'll cancel his reload animation for the charge animation to charge up his triangle ability. And while it's not necessarily quicker than his reload animation, it does allow us to do both things with only one animation. So here we're reloading the basic attack at the same time as charging up our triangle ability, saving us time. And if you're just starting out, this may seem a little bit unnecessary, but I did want to make sure we throw some tips in here for advanced players as well, and things are a little bit more technical. Moving on to some Cloud-specific combat tips. This is something else I feel like the game hasn't explained at any point, but while you're in Punisher mode, if you hold down square, it'll do this smashdown attack, and it'll automatically activate Berserk mode for Cloud for a short period of time. And what Berserk mode does is it increases the amount of damage you deal and also increases the amount of damage you receive. So it can be a good trade-off if you know when and how to use it. So I'm trying to transition these together in ways that they make sense. So I guess now we're talking about the Punisher mode. The other main use for Punisher mode, as most of you know, is that when you're in Punisher mode and you hold down the R1, the block button, if you take any physical hits, you automatically counterattack the enemy. Now, while this is an okay beginner way of parrying, there are several better ways to parry in this game. The first one to know about is that if you're in the middle of an attack and then you switch to Punisher mode, if you get hit within that same second as you switching over to Punisher mode, it'll automatically parry the enemy without the need of even blocking. And this is really good because I don't really like being in Punisher mode while attacking the enemies because it's so slow, and unless you're already expecting the attack, you don't usually get time to start blocking after the enemy has already initiated the attack. However, with this switchover method, it is actually a lot faster. But why stop there? There's actually one even better form of parrying in this game, and that's going to be with the counter stance ability we learned with Cloud. So the way this ability works is that when we use it, we'll go into this defensive stance for a couple of seconds, and if we get hit by anything during those couple of seconds, we'll counterattack with 3 devastating blows that deal massive damage. And this one is even quicker than the previous method. As you can see here, you can be attacking, as long as you're not in Punisher mode, as it's a little bit slower, and once you see the enemy go for his attack, you can often get times to actually go into counter stance and counter the enemy attack. Now, I don't want to make it sound like counter stance is paying me to promote it or anything, but quite honestly, if I had to choose one ability in the entire game, I would definitely go for counter stance. It is just so good once you get in the good habit of using it. So at least give it a try. If it's not your playstyle, that's fine, but I would definitely recommend giving it a chance. Now, something else that's really useful is that on most of the cutscenes that are transitioning into a boss fight, you can actually hold down the square button, and by doing this, once the cutscene is over, instead of transitioning directly into the boss fight, you get to open up your menu and change around your weapons, accessories, armor, materia, etc. So now moving out of the combat tips into some menu stuff before we wrap this video up, is when you're in the menus changing around your materia, what you can do is press the R1 button and open up the list to see everyone's materia at once, making it so much easier to switch around materia from one player to another, or simply see where everything is without having to exit out, go into different characters, etc, etc. And for the final tip of the video, it's definitely the most useless one, but I still feel like I wanted to put it in there because I feel like there's going to be people who don't notice this, is that when you're just walking around normally, if you press the L2, it'll switch between the minimap or the compass at the top or just having nothing on your screen. And the main reason I'm mentioning this is because I feel like some people might accidentally disable the minimap and then not know how to get it back. And the other reason is because maybe you just want to enjoy the sceneries more without having the minimap in the way, so you change it over to the compass or nothing at all. So as always guys, if you do have any extra tips that weren't mentioned in this video, please do leave them in the comments down below. I hope you did find this video helpful. If you did, don't forget that thumbs up button, subscribe for more content coming very soon, and we'll see you next time.